Hello, welcome. Thank you so much for coming to the second and last talk of the day. So I'm Joana P. Neves, Artistic Director of Drawing Now, Paris, and I have two incredibly different profiles of guests in terms of institutional representation, collecting, and exhibiting drawing. The idea is to start an initiative calling Drawing Think Tank, sort of a joke about the fact that we are so busy, all of us professionals in contemporary art and in contemporary drawing, that we don't really have time to exchange about our collections. I say our, I don't have a collection, I'm an independent curator, but you know, if people, curators or department directors and conservators, we are so busy managing our collections, trying to find ways of showing them and ways of going about them, that sometimes it's really difficult to talk about the specificities of this discipline that has acquired a sort of autonomy across the 20th century and firmly into the 21st century. And actually, Irina, who has been here before in a talk, we've been talking a lot about this, which is the fact that sometimes you create exhibitions, you work with artists, you produce work, and then you want, for example, exhibitions to travel, and you're thinking about it at a moment where actually, it is really, you're kind of in the process already and probably already thinking about the next exhibition. And so these relationships are quite tricky to establish, and that's kind of also one of the functions of Drawing Now Paris, apart from obviously having incredibly commercially successful booths for our galleries here, but it's also a professional meeting. And beyond that, there's also the fact that drawing has a very specific existence within each territory. The idea of the Drawing Think Tank in the beginning was about countries, so I thought, I'm going to invite a representative of each country, and then I started looking into different contexts, and I thought, maybe cities, maybe regions. And actually, it's really interesting to think of the territory also in that sense, and my lovely guests have such different contexts of appreciation of drawing within a national context, but also regional and also within each institution. There's institutions that have a lot of drawing but don't really show it, or show it as a sort of a side entity, let's say, for a bigger exhibition or other artistic languages. And then there's institutions who focus only on drawing, and then they have an incredible structured thinking around drawing. So this is exactly what we're going to explore today. So I'm going to introduce my guests. Irina Zucca Alessandrelli is a curator who for the best part of 15 years, has 13, has been building a collection for the Ramo Fondazione in Milano. And the good news is that after all this time, there has been an incredibly structured and sophisticated way of thinking about drawing, from the most pragmatic aspects of it to the most conceptual, but also a space eventually that is going to open. Irina will tell us all about it. And Ricardo, Nicolau, I have to say, I cannot not say it, a very old friend with whom I went to the Venice Biennial for the first time, so it's been a while, who is Deputy Director and Curator at Serralves Foundation in Porto, Portugal, which is not an institution dedicated to drawing whatsoever, but that has obviously lots of drawing in the collection. And so I asked Ricardo, who was kind enough to do this exercise of thinking what drawing means inside a collection that has many aspects and that doesn't really have departments of... Did you know what? I didn't even check.
No,
no,
it doesn't
right?
have departments.
So how do you define the collection? It's a collection of contemporary arts,
yes.
I guess?
Yes.
From what period?
From the 60s till today.
from the 60s to today. So it's a very specific collection and a very recent institution as well. And of course, I forgot to say the most important thing, which is that the collection, the Ramo collection, is 20th century drawing and 21st drawing of Italian practices. Yes. So I'm going to first invite Irina to talk about Fondazione Ramo and the collection, and maybe bringing the angle specifically into what the drawing, how you approach drawing maybe, or how drawing then reflects also the scene, let's say, your specific context, but also very quickly, how is drawing considered in Italy? Is it a practice that is very considered, that is autonomous and kind of, and there's a dedication specifically to it, or is it approached with caution, let's say? And are you a strange unicorn, or is it something that is practiced in Italy to collect drawing and to focus specifically on it?
I like the expression unicorn, strange unicorn.
That's you.
It's totally me. Yes, I think drawing today, I mean, drawing of 20th century is still underappreciated, even in contemporary drawing, even in collection, compared to Renaissance drawing.
You mean in Italy, not
in
in
Italy,
Milano?
I'm talking about Italy. Yes, Milano too. I mean, in general, in the art world in Italy, compared to the Renaissance drawing, that has a very old tradition of collections, modern drawing is not under attention, I could say that. And I think drawing people, I think that we are still a minority, as I told you. I feel to be part of a minority. And so we have to protect drawing and to... So the idea behind the collection is really to create a culture of drawing that still does not exist, in my opinion.
So, thank you so much for your transparency. I will start maybe moving into the
just very
slides.
quickly. Collezione Ramo. Yeah, I can say I'm sure is the most significant collection of the 20th century Italian drawings in the world, because it's the only one. So I cannot make a unicorn, exactly. And the aim is to tell the story of Italian art through drawing. And as I said, it's celebrated still underappreciated medium. Today we have approximately 800 works by 150 Italian artists, because we try to document the different stylistic phases. That means that of each artist we buy, we try to describe the very beginning of the practice, and then the different phases, and the final moment that sometimes is not appreciated by the market, but we don't care at all about the market. We really try to describe the developing style of an artist at its best. So I wanted to just to give you a general idea of the collection. I'm going to show you a very quick video we commissioned to a director who actually works with only with paper. So he does stop motion with paper. It should be a sound, but if it's not, it doesn't matter. In the video, it's okay. Okay. So basically, he picked some highlights from the collection. You will see the list of the artists at the end of this video, and he created this stop motion with some of the highlights. Transform and... No? Okay. There was a funny music anyway, so you're going to concentrate more on the highlights. No? Okay. All right, you will see...
C'est pas grave.
Pas grave. Ouais.
Yeah.
Yeah, here you see the listed titles and artists, just to give you a quick idea. This is my book on Italian drawing in 20th century. I try to describe the drawing instead of following as traditionally has been done so far through the movements. I try to describe the subject of the drawing. So every chapter is focusing on one specific subject, so landscape, portraits, abstraction. In this way, I was able to describe Italian art history of last century in a more focused way on paper. I mean, on paper, through paper, basically. And there is also the English version, and it's a square book because that's the way we found to publish as the best vertical and horizontal paper drawings in a way that reflects the original dimensions. That was the idea.
And what is really interesting is that the first time we talked, you said that going through the history of, the recent history of drawing in such a way kind of represents most, if not all, Italian movements, weirdly, in a very kind of easy to saw kind of way, and it's almost like you have a sort of overview of a lot of Italian movements.
Yeah, basically, yes. Every artist in the last century had to start through drawing. So even sculptor or painter, everybody was making drawing in Fine Arts Academy, while today is very different situation. So and very often drawing was a medium that covers the entire life of an artist, very immediate and very intimate one. So basically, you started to making drawing at the very beginning of your in school, and an artist usually draws until the end. So this way we were able to describe more than 40 movements, artistic movement we had in the last century.
I forgot to ask, so do you define drawing as being on, because
Right.
Here at Drawing Now, very specifically, we decided not to define drawing as on paper. There's animations, there's vectorial prints on PVC. There's a lot of definitions of drawing that we're very happy to welcome. How does it work in the collection for you, since you specifically went into this particular discipline?
Yes, thank you for asking. Actually, I consider drawing every work on paper, every technique on paper. So whatever medium.
Yes, we also
on
have the reverse question, actually. Is acrylic and oil on paper still drawing?
Yes, it is, because
Every
it's on
year.
paper.
So you only have paper, so
Base.
you basically
Yeah.
you have to find a limit for
Exactly.
a collection, right?
Yes.
Another thing that I wanted to ask you, so what I find really bizarre is that, because I kind of fight a lot to say that artists draw, it is the context of having an institutional interest in drawing that makes it exist or not, but the drawing is usually there. But I kind of say that as a provocation sometimes. But looking at your collection, it seems that even though drawing is not valued in, as you said, underrepresented, and it's kind of like maligned almost sometimes, so many gallerists, as I said previously yesterday, sometimes ask artists to go on canvas, because they can add a zero. And so why is there so much drawing, or did you have difficulty in finding drawing in a context that doesn't particularly sees drawing as an autonomous practice, or hasn't seen it for a long time?
The biggest difficulty I had was archiving drawings, because before buying, I always contact the archive to get the documentation, to make sure that the work is authentic, and very often the answer is we don't catalog drawings. We catalog just painting or the sculpture. So drawing is always the last things that goes published and goes on a catalog. So sometimes we were, as a collectors of drawing, we were we were actually giving to the archive news and documentation about the drawing. That gives you the idea of how underappreciated it still is.
So, do you want to, at this stage, do you want to add anything? Shall I?
Go ahead.
Yeah?
Yeah. Yeah, just go ahead. Yeah, this is the version. Yeah, I just put some exhibition. This was the first one. Because basically I started...
Do you mind if we talk about this later so
No,
that
no.
we move on? This is my bad. Our computer crashed, so we couldn't kind of alternate the images. There's been a lot of technology
it's pretty long if you have
challenges.
Go
Yeah,
ahead.
it's fine. We'll get there. We have time.
You get a preview of my presentation.
You sent us 50 images. So while I move the PowerPoint, Ricardo, would you introduce? Yeah, but Ricardo, can you introduce the Serralves museum / foundation / museum?
I have to start saying that I'm officially embarrassed after this presentation because I have nothing compared to.
Irina always does that.
But my institution has nothing to do with Irina's institution. So I'm also embarrassed because I'm speaking English and not French. But the history of Serralves has a lot to do with France, as you'll see. So this Art Deco villa is where it all started. And I can tell you the story in 5 minutes. It's like a fairy tale. This Portuguese count, well, he bought the title, but he was a count. And in the 10s and 20s of the last century, was the owner of one of the biggest textile factories in Europe. And as the owner of this factory, he would travel annually to Paris to attend the international industrial fairs. And in 1925, Paris was proudly presenting to the world the Art Deco style. And he became so obsessed that he decided immediately, I will go back to Portugal and I will build my own Art Deco villa. So he asked, by the way, Serralves is the name of the land, the property, where his grandmother lived, and he asked permission to build a house. He was smart enough to invite 3 different French architects that did not know that they were working for the same guy. So he would receive the drawings and he would pick the details that he liked the most and make this sort of synthesis. So, and in the end, he asked a Portuguese architect to sign the project. So if you ask me who is the...
You're really embarrassing us here. You're being too transparent.
If you ask me who is the architect of the house, is the count, of course. But even if the construction starts in 1927, because of first the Spanish Civil War and then the Second World War, it was impossible to bring materials. And so that's why it was only finished in 1942. And that explains why it's not pure Art Deco. It's a mix of styles. As every Portuguese tycoon, he got bankrupt and had to sell the property, the villa and the factory, to another family who also got bankrupt. And in the 80s, the villa was kind of abandoned. And a sociological miracle happened. The Portuguese government decided to buy the property and to make a contemporary art museum. This in the 80s. But the museum opened in 1999. And
Before the Tate.
Before the Tate. And the first director arrived in 96, which means that for approximately 4 years he was the most exotic museum director in the world because he only had the villa to work with. So he started inviting artists to make specific projects in the villa. And even today, that we have this big museum by Alves Vieira, like the hero architect of Portugal. When artists visit the Serralves, they always say, please give me the villa, I want the villa. Unfortunately for them, the villa is now being used to show this collection of Miro that was deposited.
It's another story that you're not going to tell.
And another relationship with Tate. The first director of Serralves was Vicente Todoli, that stayed in Serralves for 7 years, and after that became the director of Tate Modern. He had this 7-year rule. He stayed in Serralves for 7 years, and in Tate for 7 years also. And when he arrived, in terms of collection,
did they start building the collection in '96? So it was João. The director you're talking about is João Fernandes in '96. No, that's not him. So he replaced.
We arrived with Vicente.
With Vicente Todoli.
He was the deputy of Vicente.
Exactly. But who started building the collection then?
Well, before '99, we had. I work in Serralves for 19 years now, so I'm entitled to say we. We had this collection from the Portuguese state in deposit. Just that. Oh, sorry. And when Vicente Todoli arrived in 1999, he started thinking, what is lacking in the Portuguese context of institutions? And no institution was paying enough attention, in his opinion, to the 1960s and 70s. So he started the collection by, he was still able to buy, it was not impossible because it was still cheap to buy historical works from the 60s and 70s in 1999. And so he started buying from international artists and also from Portuguese artists. And the way the collection has grown is usually we make temporary exhibitions and we always buy from the artists we work with. So if you see the program Serralves, you will have an idea of the collection.
Of the collection.
Where does drawing enters this story?
Can I just interrupt you? I'm so sorry because so every time we speak about the collection or when we think of Serralves, maybe I'm being arrogant here, but I think, am I the first person to ask you about drawing in the collection, and say yes, and was it annoying? Was it an interesting exercise to think about it? Was it, how did you go about thinking about it, and did it make sense to go about the collection that has no specific departments, because it's that period where we weren't a sculptor, artists were artists who practiced sculpture. So there was this, and also focusing on the 60s is very much that ethos of, we're artists, so we don't think in terms of medium. So how was the exercise for you, and how would you define drawing once you looked at the collection in terms of the collection?
Coming from Portugal, relating art with drawing is something natural. It's not something that you have to overthink. It has a sad side. I explain. Usually, all the cliches have some truth, and one of the cliches about Portugal is that we are a country of poets, and second cliche is that Portuguese artists draw. I was saying that it has a sad side because it's eminently economical. In a poor country like Portugal, of course, that all the artists would draw because it was much cheaper than. We also have this story in Portugal about scale. Why do Portuguese artworks usually are in a very modest scale. It also has to do with economics because, of course, it was cheaper or possible to work in. And also, I have to confess that Joana helped me think about the specificities of Portuguese drawings, or drawing between drawing and Portugal. I was saying that we in Serralves started the collection in the 60s. Actually, it was in the 50s because we have this nucleus of works from a group of artists that we call the artists of the concrete poetry or the experimental poetry, and were artists that in the 50s under the fascist regime became the first really international movement, because they were having dialogues with other groups of artists in countries like Brazil, for example. And they were very interested in the relationship between words and drawing. Where's the line between these two entities? There's a Portuguese artist that used to. It's not a case of Anatoly, this artist that we are seeing. Another artist used to copy phrases in languages that he did not know, in foreign languages. And he would ask, am I writing or am I drawing? I'm drawing, of course, even if it's sentences, if it's words, letters, but I'm drawing.
So when we go back to the idea of drawing, and we talked about this relationship between literature, poetry, graphic poetry, experimental drawing, and experimental poetry. When you look at the collection, that is a very specific angle. Do you think that there's a sort of how would you define drawing yourself personally? And is there something that is specific to the collection of Serralves that would, on paper or, in terms of the line, whatever? How do you think that there's, or can we come to a definition or a marking of territory of where drawing could be situated?
Well, even if we don't have departments, I guess that everything in paper is catalogued as drawing, of course. But if you ask me, and looking at the examples of the first artists that come to my mind when I think about drawing in a collection, I think that drawing is, two things. It's a translation of the process of thinking. So you can, when you look at the drawing, you see how you process thoughts in your head. I will explain this better later. And it also has to do, in some cases, that I find very interesting, this sort of daily practice or daily activity that I relate to gymnastics or meditation, or it's a way to achieve a certain state of mind. That's why I'm calling it a daily exercise. So, as a translation of what I'm saying, maybe we could go back to the first images. Okay. So this is so I asked Joana to show four Portuguese artists from different generations. This is the youngest one, Diana Lucas, and she not only makes drawing as a daily activity, and the exercise in her case means that she will use only 1 or 2 or 3 lines to make a form, And then she translates the drawings to sculptures, or I don't know if I will call these sculptures or drawing, but and she's very inspired
Sorry,
by
what's the material?
concrete. And she's very inspired by the last artist, Lourdes Castro. Can you try to find? No, after. I think it's the last. Okay, this is Lourdes. So Lourdes and Diana, this young artists, have in common they were both born in Madeira Island. Lourdes lived in Paris for many years, and she, all her life, she died recently, she was 90, so all her long life she developed or worked around the theme of the shadow. And it's funny because she says, and we have to blame Ileana Zonaben, the gallerist, because when I first moved to Paris and I showed my work to Ileana, she said, oh, it's good, but it's not unique. There are lots of artists working with the concept of shadow. And so Lourdes said, and I stubbornly went home and decided, I will know everything about the shadow, and I will know every artist that works with the shadow. And this work in particular is, as Diana's work, a daily activity, where Lourdes would pick flowers from Madeira, make these arrangements, and wait for the right time of the day to have the right shadow, and draw the shadow around the. Okay.
Sorry, this is interfering with the speaker, so I'm going to move a bit. So I would like to go back to, because we've seen the image of Diana Lucas with drawing in space, and I think the question of showing drawing is really important. And the idea that when you have a collection of drawing, in some ways that's the focus. So do you think that that has an impact on the way you consider drawing, but also do you have more freedom? Do you feel more responsibility also in representing this discipline? And so while you answer, I'm going to go back the images.
Yeah, I think at least in Italy, when you see, very rarely you see exhibition of drawing, very often you see the light reflecting on the glass, or you see the yellow line on the edges of the drawing. I mean, actually, it costs to conserve it in a proper way, a collection of drawing, and to exhibit it. We are very concerned about that, so we establish, if you go back, yes, here, for example, that was an exhibit, so I can show you how we frame, how we conceive the layout of an exhibition usually. This was actually the first exhibition of Collezione Ramo, was in 2018. Was the first time we exhibited, because before I started 5 years before, and I just did the acquisition. So before showing, and we had to arrive, I know. It was a privilege, obviously, yes. And I consider all the works kind of my cousins, because it's the story of my life in a way, my family. And at the end, to show properly the works on paper, we decided to never use the passe-partout. So you will see the gray background is basically a conservation paper, and then this is the solution we found. We found to leave the original color of the paper talking. I mean, otherwise with the passe-partout you cover, and there are two different colors, usually different type of white, and then sometimes are yellowish because of the time. So the best situation is to leave kind of floating the drawings, so you can see the original shape, you can see as it was on the artist table, and to leave the conservation paper in the background. We found this one which is gray, because we thought that it's got the color of the graphite and also the color that matches better different color of paper, different type of whites, I would say.
Can I just ask you a very quick question? Because when we talk about drawing, and sometimes we had a very interesting talk recently, with Pascal Neveu from the FRAC Picardie, our partner, institution dedicated to drawing, and Claudine Gramont from the Centre Pompidou, so the chief curator of the graphic drawings and prints department, and Pascal had a very relaxed attitude to lending drawings, and he said, "Oh, we have them on loan. It's fine," because the mission of a FRAC is to show the collection as much as possible. And Claudine was saying, "Oh, we're the department that says no most often because of conservation issues." So because you kind of created the collection, and you specifically had time to work on to really think about how to show the drawings, did you work with a big team of people? Is drawing as fragile as people think it is? Is it a reason not to show it? Are there any solutions to that issue? Do you have, because the former director of FRAC Picardie was not as cavalier about drawing, because I asked him for Silvia Bacci and he said no, because it had already been exposed, the quota of hours and days that it had for that year. So how does it work for the collection?
Actually, I'm usually a no person. I kind of refuse several times loans. Last year I refused loans to 5 different museums, in Brazil, even in Italy, in Naples, because very often they don't have the right temperature. The temperature has to be between 20 degrees and 24, maximum 25, but it has to stay constant this way. And what happens often is that museums don't have the budget to keep, especially in the summertime, in very hot temperature, to keep that the 4 degrees, let's say, that balance. So this could be one case. For in that situation, I have to really to say no and not to loan the work. Or another situation could be when I refuse a loan, actually was because of the length of the exhibition. If it is more than 3 months, we do not allow the loan. And actually, if a museum does not have a collection of works on paper, they don't know it. So they consider drawing like a painting. So they ask you for 5 months. Sometimes they even ask you if you agree to leave it more than 5 months, which is unbelievable for a drawing. So I noticed that there is a big ignorance about that, about conservation. And we have a conservator who works with us from the very beginning of the collection. So before buying any work, I go with her. We check the conservation parameters. We actually we check the condition of the paper and to see if it is even to negotiate the price, actually.
So. First of all, I want to correct what I said, because this is being filmed. Pascal Neveu is not cavalier about drawing that, but there's a much more relaxed practice about drawing. So Pascal, I'm sorry. Ricardo, do you have the same concerns in Serralves? What are the kind of rules you've established for learning? Because it is a serious issue. You didn't talk about the light, actually, because there's also the kind of the question of light, the lumens of the spots that you use, and the kind of flash bulbs that you use.
And we have to add to that the security. Know how many guards, how many people are visiting the space. But I think if we are much more relaxed, and the next time you will need Sylvia Bashley knock at our door. Oh, okay. And you got a positive answer? No.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was a while ago, I must say, so you probably don't remember. But yeah, you did loan me. Yeah, of course. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, officially. So going back to exhibiting drawing, to showing drawing. So this is let's say the little house where drawing lives. You know, the frame. But in terms of the space, so let's talk about.
Yeah, this was an exhibition in London, but anyway, our collection lives horizontally in the dark and at 20 degrees. So we never keep the drawings in frames. We frame them each time there is an exhibition.
In terms of exhibiting and showing drawing, I'm also interested in talking about the synergies that drawing can create. So here at Drawing Now Paris, we have a prize, which means that the artist obviously has money, but there's also an exhibition at the Drawing Lab with our partnership with Frac Picardie. For example, our laureate of last year, Susanna Inglada from Moritz van der Laar Gallery, has an exhibition at the Frac that I curated. The exhibition at Drawing Lab is curated by a curator invited by the artist. So there's a sort of a, I'm not bragging, this is just an ecosystem that is created naturally when you kind of move these initiatives and you start these initiatives. So I'm really interested in knowing if there's a specificity of initiatives in both your contexts. I don't know if I warned you that I was going to ask this question because, of course, in Italy there's a far more reduced number of initiatives, and I'm thinking that in Portugal there's quite a few. But Serralves doesn't have anything organized around drawing, right? But there's an ecosystem in Portugal that already has those structures. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Can you be more specific?
There's a drawing prize, what is it called? The Flower Drawing Prize, for example. So there's a sort of a recognition. There's also Drawing Room, the art fair. So do you think that there's an impact on, producing drawing on the side of artists, but also institutionally?
I think that I will have to not disagree, but say that
you can.
No, but Portugal is such a tiny country that I think that we don't go to that specificity of. So we have lots of awards for young artists, but I think that drawing is not seen as something worth awarding.
Yeah, like you were saying, it's natural.
Not because we don't like drawing, as I said, because
I think it's the opposite. It's
no,
so
it's
natural.
the opposite,
Yeah,
yes.
exactly. It's such a natural. I think that I kind of was in a certain way. The fact that you were surprised about my question is it's so. We do have an art fair dedicated to drawing, but it's true that we don't really think twice about it. There is not a militant side that we have here. We're very militant about drawing, but it's true that you go to Drawing Room in Lisbon. And there's no kind of like, what is drawing and what can we do for drawing? It's such a natural ecosystem, which is why I kind of put you two together, because it's such a different context. Because Irina, you had to organize an event around drawing, which
Yeah.
Why did you think about doing that? And can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes. Well, actually, talking about fair, in Italy there is only Artissima fair in Turin that has a section dedicated to drawing, but there is no one fair specific for drawing, actually, like here. Yeah, so yeah, this is a Milano Drawing Week that I invented. Sorry, I don't want to feel like I'm the protagonist, but actually nobody else cares, so actually I'm the only one. So
You're the Batman of drawing. Exactly. You don't want to be, but you have to.
We have a problem, I think, because of the Renaissance and also the history of market. That's the thing. So the situation is that there is not specific attention to drawing in the art world in Italy. So yeah, so I created the Milano Drawing Week 6 years ago, which is a week of exhibition, event, workshop, entirely dedicated to drawing, free. Yeah, in collaboration with the municipality, the Department of Culture, which is, yeah. These are some images of how it works. Basically, the format is I gave to the artist I select the link to see the entire collection Ramo. So basically, it's an event dedicated to modern and contemporary drawing. And then the artist picks what he wants from the collection on loan and put it in the solo show, basically. So yeah, it's a free event. It's a curatorial project because you cannot just get in by paying. You have to be selected, which is a big difference with the Design Week in Milan, which is total mess because you just pay, you enter. That's my personal comment. It was created to discover who draws today. That's another need, to see who is making drawing today. And it is a bridge between past and future. It's an art treasure hunt. That's what some viewers told me, because we make a map and you actually can enter private spaces and spaces that usually are not open to the public. So it's also an occasion to go around and discover new buildings, new spaces. Engage a very diverse audience. Yeah, I could say it's a cross-disciplinary collaboration between the arts, because every year I look for other fields, other kind of type of artists works with drawing. So even in music, you will see other fields. Yeah, you can go. Exhibitions spread throughout the city. Yeah, there are private spaces, museum spaces. Yeah, these are some images of institutional spaces, Museum of Natural History, private galleries, to show you different spaces. This was a building from the 16th century. This was a concert where actually an artist was was drawing about the instrument that was the orchestra was playing. It was Benjamin Britten concert. This is the Archaeological Museum. This is a crazy workshop. It's called sketch meeting, where people is invited to make drawings for free in a specific museum. So this was a concert with an orchestra of paper. This was a musician playing. The workshop for adults, workshop for kids. We organize a lot of things. Yeah, this is a very quick video that gives you a general idea. Sorry, no music, so you must be very concentrated on the images. So it's written in Italian. There are exhibitions. There is a prize. So I go with a jury of architects to tour all. So here you could see all the artists explaining their own solo show, a talk. Yeah, museums. Also, we want to promote the idea that drawing is really fun. So, okay, music. Yeah, thank you. This is a prize. This is a physical prize, but it's a prize in money for the artist. Also, we are very well known in Milan for the party, the opening party, which is important because it gives you an idea of how much fun is drawing also, which is something not everybody knows. But I'm really convinced about that. And yes, we will be at the Festival du Dessin in Arles in April, if anyone is going. It's far away, Arles, but still is in France, and so maybe I will meet someone of you.
So, did you say there was also, you also work in the context of commercial galleries as well? So there's of course lots of institutions, it's been growing and growing, but when I went there it was really, and it kind of started as a collaboration with galleries, also commercial galleries that would do solo shows. And so Irina, so the gallery would select the artist, and the artist was invited to look at the collection and to find the drawing that kind of resonated. And the outcome was quite interesting because it was artists looking at the collection as well, which I think is a really interesting aspect of the project, because then the conversations with the artists were really fascinating, and they, you know, we could do a whole talk just about that. I'm, of course, I would love to pass the microphone to you guys if you have any questions. We are kind of running out of time. We should be starting to, you know, to think about closing the talk. But I would kind of be interested in hearing you say how the collection is built. Ricardo, if there's any specificity or any perspective that you're thinking in terms of collections. Also, you know, we have to kind of mention the unmentionable, which is the situation is a bit complex at the moment. So are you being affected by it as well in terms of acquisitions as well? Have there been changes across time in the pace of acquisitions, specifically in Serralves? Yeah, I'm really curious about that. How, you know, how much you can disclose, I suppose. Obviously, there's some internal secrets.
Well, we don't feel it yet. We have the same money as we used to. In terms of, I think that like every or almost every institution nowadays, we are buying more and more women. So instead of 30% in the collection, they became 50% in a few years. But going back to how natural the relationship between art and drawing in Portugal is, in Portugal it's not surprising that in a commercial gallery an artist makes annually an exhibition, decides to make an exhibition of drawings only. So no one in Portugal will suspect that the artist, the gallerist, or both want to make quick money and sell everything. So it's only natural. As it is natural that the one example that we did not show, Jorge Queiroz, is an artist. Is 55 now. For the last 5 years he has been making paintings, but all her life he made drawing exclusively. And
he started with drawing and animated drawing, actually.
Yeah. And usually all the texts written about his work used the term surrealism, because when he first started this conversation, and Joana asked, what would you say that drawing is? And I said it's a translation of the process of thinking. In the case of Jorge Queiroz, that is absolutely evident, because it's like being inside a head and making connections and synapses between things, and he doesn't have a clue about what he's going to draw. He just follows.
Yeah, I would say that actually the Milano Drawing Week is the only occasion that artists have to have a solo show just by showing drawing. So it happens very often that artists tell me, wow, amazing, I can have an exhibition just with my drawing, because galleries usually do not allow that, honestly, for a market reason.
Collection, acquisitions. My question about acquisitions in collection. Are you still acquiring?
Yeah, we still acquire. Yeah. We acquired contemporary artists, but also sometimes very important work from the beginning of the last century comes out, and so recently I bought a couple of works of the first decade of last century. Yeah.
So we have time for maybe one or two questions. Does anyone want to ask anything? All right, so...
Thank you. I'm not sure, I think it was you, Irina. One of you said you only have works on paper. Right, it was you, right? Because you obviously have these concrete drawings in the room. Why only on paper? Because drawing is not only... It's just your choice to only have these on paper?
Well, I've done some researches, and basically I came from an experience in American museums. Actually, the definition of works on paper is generally the definition that the Department of Drawing assume, like in the world, actually. And sometimes there are also Department of Drawing that have photography because it's on paper. So paper is really the medium that makes the drawing in museums usually.
There's a strange experience that you have usually. I don't know if you're a curator, but sometimes you're looking for works, and it happens here when I'm curating the exhibition. I'm looking into collections, and you think drawings, but then it doesn't come up, and you say paper, and then suddenly or works on paper. So some collections online, institutional collections, do not have the term drawing. They have works on paper. So sometimes you have to go through photos and photos and photos and photos and photos, and you're looking for drawings. So there's weird overlaps of. For example, the Frac Picardie is now acquiring animation, for example, but you could argue that animation would be in time-based medium. So there's always, I think I'm really relaxed about that, because I think that, definitions obviously are spectrums and spectra. And there's overlaps and there's specificities, and I think both are important. There's
Sometimes you find graphics as a definition.
Yes, you do. Yeah.
Which is even more confusing because it makes unique pieces with printed and edition. So.
But then you have Germany, because I was talking with Jenny Graser, who's part of our selection committee, and we were talking about the fact that there's no time separation in Kupferstier cabinets, for example, all across Germany. And so you have, from, prehistory,
Middle Age.
to now, exactly. And then there's prints and drawings, and it doesn't really matter that much. So, there's a huge interest in prints. Whereas coming from Portugal, for me, prints is, when you can't buy the real thing, you have a print. So there's these kind of overlaps, and also these cultural preconceptions, I think, about practices. But it's a really great question, because I don't know about you, and I don't want to presume that that's the reason, but I spoke with another person who's building a big collection of drawing, and they were just saying, first of all, I like to touch the work, so I never frame them, and I kind of open my drawers, and I look at them, and I feel them, and also it allows me in terms of space to have far more works than if I was, so that's also not a definition per se, but it's also a practical and almost passionate reason to, and greedy, more. And it's true that, it's one of the things that we say a lot here, which is that, you can have, why buy a sculpture when you can have 5 drawings? There's kind of that, also these things, but it's always a question that we come back to, actually. Every year in the selection committee, we have these questions, and we have now galleries that are used to ask us the question, and I even have the case this year of a gallery are you sure this is still drawing? It's yeah, it's on paper, you can bring it. But it is oil painting, and now they're the ones who kind of are saying, come on, now you're exaggerating. So I think the fact that things are not fixed is very healthy. And it's nice to go back to these questions and to kind of explore them, because then you get to kind of assess motivations, I guess. Sorry, I'm talking a lot. Maybe there's other questions. Yes.
Thank you. Also for Irina, is there in the collection any work that expands into three-dimensionality, but it's made out of paper? I'm thinking, for example, of the person who won the prize this year. Something similar to that?
Yeah. Actually, we have third-dimensional work on paper. For example, we have a sculpture by Bruno Munari, which is entitled "Sculpture to Travel," which is actually work on paper that you can fold in 3 parts and you can put in your pocket. And this was conceived for like when you go to the very cheesy hotel, you don't have anything on your table, and you out your nice sculpture in paper, you open it, and then you put it back when you leave the hotel, for example. So we have this kind of work. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think we can finish with Bruno Munari, portable sculpture drawings. It's a really great way to, and looking at Jorge Queiroz drawings. Thank you so much, Ricardo, Nicolau. Thank you, Irina, Zucca, Alessandrelli.
Thank you for having us here.
Thank you for being here. It was a real pleasure. Thank you for listening. Thank you, everyone.